What's going on, guys? Ben Brewster here, treadathletics.com. This is the band Serratus series. So we basically formulated this series of several exercises to help activate the serratus. Dysfunction is just a kind of a general overall shoulder warm-up, similar to something like a J-band routine. But these are specifically based around serratus activation and restoring that upward rotation after you've done some of your other mobility work. So without further ado, let's get into the video. So for this series, we can use a J-band or we can use any sort of resistance band. If you have just normal resistance bands at your facility, we can use slightly different resistances depending on the exercise, but for the sake of this, a J-band will work. So we're going to start with just a protracted front raise. Basically, it's going to be a split stance front raise. You're going to lock out your arms straight, and then as you go through the raise, you want to think about reaching through that entire arc. So it's not just a simple front raise. You're reaching as far as you can, creating as large an arc of motion as possible through that entire front raise. What you should feel if you're doing this right, you should feel with that reach that serratus turns on. So as Devin begins to reach, what he should feel is a contraction right through his serratus. Okay, the serratus is responsible for upward rotation, is responsible for gluing that serratus along the rib cage as you go into overhead motion. So this is a good first exercise to help feel the serratus engage as you go overhead. All right, so the next exercise is the band bear hugs. You can use a J-band for this. Devin's got just a regular resistance band, which works as well. So typically you're going to want to double it up, get a decent amount of resistance, something about shoulder width depending on the resistance of the band. But he's going to go ahead and wrap the band around his upper back. Make sure to get that flush in position so that it's not riding up or down. It might slip a little bit if you're sweaty doing this without a shirt on. So I would do this with a shirt on. We're just trying to show his scapular movement for the sake of this video. But basically we're just going to be going through that horizontal adduction position. What you want to notice here is that he's not squeezing his shoulder blades together. The point of this is actually be protracted where the scapula are away from the spine throughout the entire range. So at the back end of the movement, he's still driving the scaps away from each other, and he's holding that protraction through that entire range, through that entire movement, reaching at the end and still reaching at the back end. So this is the band bear hugs. Again, a really good one to feel the serratus activation. The next one is protracted pull-aparts. This is basically the exact reverse of the band bear hugs. So instead of horizontally adducting, we're going to be horizontally abducting. But instead of it being a normal band pull-apart, which most of you are familiar with, we're not trying to squeeze the scaps together at the back end. Even at the back end, it's still going to be a reach. So the finished position is a reach, and the starting position is also a reach. So he's holding that protraction, he's feeling the serratus engagement, and he's trying to maintain that as he goes into horizontal abduction. So we're trying to feel the serratus engaged through this entire movement. You can't really mess this one up as long as you think about reaching with the scaps throughout the entire movement. So that is the protracted pull-aparts. The next one is the angels or rainbows. Basically, he's going to be going overhead and controlling upward rotation and downward rotation. So you're going to get comfortable with, if this is a little bit too much with the band doubled up, you can just go half of the band, so show what that would look like. You can basically just make it lighter that way. You want to find a width to where the top of the movement isn't all the way out here, or it's somewhere around full shoulder flexion to a little bit outside. So whatever feels comfortable for you there. From here, it's not one where you're trying to bend the elbows and crank into a ton of retraction and downward rotation. Try to keep the arm straight the whole time, and again, trace a long arc with the scaps, trying to reach with the scaps throughout the entire range and control it nice and slow on the way up and on the way down. So Devin's trying to keep a stable ribcage position, stable pelvic position, and he's trying to get all this range through the scaps. Again, this isn't one that we need to load super heavy. We're trying to reinforce good scapular control, both on the concentric and on the eccentric of the movement. So just learning to turn on the serratus and activate all these scapular stabilizing muscles as we go overhead in this movement. So that is the rainbows or band angels. The next exercise is banded scapular cars. So if you've never done scapular cars or controlled articular rotations before, then this is one that you can play with without the band to start. But basically you're going to extend the arms, hold the arms straight, and it's an isolation of the entire scapular range of motion, from retraction to elevation to protraction to depression. So it's basically just working all around the clock with the scapula. We're going to add a band here to specifically emphasize protraction. So all you're going to do, wrap the band around the upper back, and it's working your way around the clock, emphasizing scapular movement. So again, it's not one you need to go super heavy on. It's more of a scapular motor control drill. And again, we're just reinforcing that mind-muscle connection, in this case with the serratus.